And maybe I ought to wait until tomorrow.
Oh, what's the matter? You scared? Go ahead and knock.
No, I'm not afraid.
Go on and knock. Louder.
Come in. Hello, Porky. Come on in.
Hello, Mr. Schlesinger. Hello, Leon.
Why is there a guy named Leon Schlesinger as the producer of these Looney Tunes? I wondered that when I used to watch the old cartoons on TV. Like, who is this guy? He's not Chuck Jones. He's not Tex Avery. Produced by him. Gee, what a great job.
Leon Schlesinger kind of fell into animation to a certain extent. He had owned Pacific Art and Title, and maybe as an extension of making, cartoon drawings on title cards, he decided to extend into animation.
He was very friendly with the Warner Brothers, and from what I understand, put some money into the Vitaphone, which the Warners were developing, the whole idea of sound movies. And when that became a big, big success, and Leon wanted to move on from what he was doing, Warner Brothers said, now that we're in the sound business and Hollywood is completely transformed, you had been doing title cards, that's a graphic medium, of film. Maybe you can help us do cartoons. Mickey Mouse is a big sensation over there at Disney. We need to do that too. We're hiring songwriters for our musicals, like 42nd Street. And we want to plug those songs. We want people to go out and buy the sheet music. Maybe these cartoons could promote those songs.
We're in the money.
We're in the money.
We got a lot of fun. It takes to get along.
Some people that actually were doing stop motion animation in Hollywood introduced Leon to Hugh Harman and Rudy Ising. And they had the Bosco the Talking Kid showing a type of dialogue animation that they had pioneered. And that got Leon really interested in helping these guys and doing some kind of animation with them. And he kind of opened doors and gave them enough money to do Sinking in the Bathtub. And he ran it for Jack Warner, and halfway through the cartoon, Jack turned to Leon and said, I want 12 more. And that just gave it the big impetus.
Leon wanted to do more than just titles and cartoons. He wanted to really have a full, expanded studio. He had an opportunity under Warner Brothers to do some other things, and a few years into his arrangement with Warner's, they allowed him to produce a series of westerns with John Wayne.
I'll give you rats just exactly 10 minutes to get out of town. And if you ever show up around here again, I may not be so generous. Wait a minute. Clarence!
That would be the only live-action features that Leon Schlesinger would ever produce. Maybe he just figured, I'm doing fine being the king of cartoons, and really don't need to go any further here. A few years into the Looney Tunes, Harman and Ising wanted some more money to produce the shorts, and Leon was only getting a certain amount from Warner's and couldn't give them a raise or any extra money for production. So Harman and Ising left, and they took their character Bosco with them. Leon was left with nothing, no studio. He was left with Looney Tunes, Merrie Melodies, and the fact that the characters said at the end. Those are the only things that he had, but he had the deal with Warner Brothers. So he quickly hired animators, took some of the animators like Freeling and Robert McKimson, who stayed loyal to Leon, set them up, and started doing Looney Tunes and Merrie Melodies from his own studio.
gang. And now if you'll all be quiet, we'll start the show.
There was a gold rush mentality at Leon's studio because a lot of animators saw it as wide open. This is our opportunity. You know, there's no preconceived notions here. You know, Leon was just getting his feet wet, being a more hands-on type producer. So he got a lot of people that were creative and wanted to get a foot in the door, were willing to work hard to do it.
It was a year or so into that they hired Tex Avery and Frank Tashlin, musician Carl Stalling, and voice actor Mel Blanc. And that made all the world of difference. A few years later, Warner Brothers cartoons, as we know them, began.
Doggone you, old mean wabbit.
You'll occasionally hear, you know, in a book by Chuck Jones, how they, you know, didn't really get along that well with Leon. They really didn't know Leon, and that actually worked to their advantage. And Leon didn't really know them either.
I think what the Warner's animators and directors saw in Leon was a guy who likes to laugh. So if they made him laugh, they know that they were pleasing him. A guy who liked to make money. So if the cartoons were successful, they know they're pleasing him. And they could try anything to meet those two goals.
Swing it!
And Leon was a great boss. I loved him. We once hauled him into the Leon Schlesinger to the projection room. Yeah, what's going on? We want a raise, and we insist that we get a raise. And he said, a raise? Wait, you can't come and drag me in here and ask me for a raise just like this. As a matter of fact, this is a very bad thing you're doing. You should be back in your room working and doing your job and whatnot. And then he collapsed, and then he fainted. Holy cow, we've killed him. We couldn't believe it. We came and looked at him, and he was lying there. Good God. Call the front office, get an ambulance, call somebody. Well, after 15, 20 minutes of all this nonsense, he finally shook himself a little bit, and he got up and said, this is terrible. I can't stand this kind of stuff. And he got up and went to his room. We said, Jesus Christ, we can't ask him for a raise now. Poor guy, we almost killed him.
Maybe that they were going to ask for a $5 a week raise or something, you know. He says, you're persecuting me, boys and girls.
You know, he put on an act for us. He tried to, next year, we tried to do the same thing, and oh my gosh, my heart. No, Leon, don't give us that crap. Well, you did it before, we're not going to accept it. See, so he was a good guy. He's a real good guy.
They would put all the brushes in their safe. They had a safe, an old-fashioned safe. So they have to take the combination of the safe. You would say you ask for a brush. Say, may I have one number 6 red sable, please? And they would go to the safe. And then, of course, Leon said, well, don't take too many of them, you know. Don't use too many, you know.
Mr. Schlesinger often confers with his associate, Mr. Raymond Katz, on vital financial problems of the studio.
I'd say about 20,000 would be a good estimate.
That's a pretty high figure. I'd say 15,000.
Oh, don't be screwy, Ray. I'll compromise at 18,000.
I still say it's 15,000.
I'll make you a bet. We've polished at least 18,000 cells today.
Leon liked to play the horses. Leon liked playing producer. Leon liked being the boss. And as long as the cartoons were good, were getting good reviews, were funny, making people laugh, that's all he cared about.
Listen, can't we settle this amicably?
Leon Schlesinger didn't pay any attention to what was happening. All he knew was when a picture was finished, he could sell it to Warner Brothers. We were doing our very best to avoid any contact with the head office, the front office. And we lived in this old building. It was a crummy old place, you know, and that's where, when Leon would come back there, he'd put rubbers, as they were called then, on his feet. At any rate, he'd come back there and look around and say, Jesus, this is a terrible looking place. As you know, his voice became Daffy Duck's. And he says, I wouldn't work in a place like this. And He's the boss, you know.
The thing about Leon, where he really was smart, he let the people alone. You know, he didn't hassle people. And, you know, as long as you made his pictures on time and you didn't run over budget, everything was great. I don't recall anyone he ever really was that harsh with, you know. As a matter of fact, if he had to do something distasteful, he'd delegate it to somebody else, one of the secretaries or something.
Leon, the reason we did it, we were in a new business. Leon Schlesinger, all he cared about was making dollars. He was making film, and he didn't know or care what went on in film, as long as it was acceptable to Warner Brothers. As long as he made a buck, he didn't care what the characters were.
Well, Porky, what's on your mind? What can I do for you?
I think the key thing about Leon was that, you know, up until, say, even the 1960s, basically showbiz, whether it was theater, whether it was film or television or radio, was dominated by these like larger-than-life showman types who all were at least a little bit of a con artist, a little bit of a flim-flam man, and all the great producers, all the sort of these characters, you know, from Florence Ziegfeld to Mervyn LeRoy to you know, Irving Thalberg or Louis B. Mayer, they all had that element where, you know, they grew up around carnivals and they grew up in vaudeville houses, and they all were these like larger-than-life figures. And I think Leon totally represents that in a very big way. I mean, the mere fact that he would, you know, appear in some of his own cartoons as a, you know, as a character, as a personality, you know, you always get the sense that he's trying to put something over on somebody. And I definitely think you see, you know, even though Leon was not an artist, he was really not even a filmmaker. He was really not anything other than, you know, just that. But the mere fact that Leon was that character, I really think that that was sort of a contributing factor. That, you know, that's perhaps why the Warner cartoons have that personality, because it does kind of trickle down from Leon. And there's definitely, you know, in the Warner cartoon as it evolved by the 1940s, there's always this element of somebody trying to get the best of somebody, trying to put something over on somebody else. And, you know, there's always this bit of like subterfuge that's going on. And I always, you know, I have to think that some of that just came from Leon. I mean, that just, you know, was the nature of his particular beast.
This is your lucky day. Opportunity is knocking.
He used to tell his crew, let Disney make the chicken salad, we'll make the chicken shit. And, you know, in his crude way, he was saying, go for it, boys. Make something really funny. I don't care how crude or crazy it is. Go for it. We're not Disney, so embrace it. Even by mocking him, they came up with characters, you know. Obviously, the big story, of course, was that he had a bit of a lisp, which they used as Daffy Duck's voice.
Them silly ducks, going south every winter, north in the summer, south in the winter, north in the summer, south in the winter. They're in a rut. Confidentially, folks, I ain't going south this winter. I'm going to stick around and check up on this winter business.
Indians, Redskins, Mohicans, Indians, Redskins, Tommy, the Hatchets,
He loved Porky Pig. Porky was his talisman, it was his breakthrough character. That's the first character that he really was in charge of, that made a big impression on audiences.
Get the goddamnedest thing.
So that was something that he loved. I think probably he loved Porky more than any of the other characters, just because he came along at that pivotal time.
Leon used to complain, we never do any Porky Pigs. See, Porky Pig was the character of Leon. How come we don't do Porky Pigs?
The guy said he's going to be in the next picture. And then they would tack up different little drawings, maybe fake ones, and stick them in different parts of the storyboard.
So no matter what story they were making, it wasn't while they put one of these things. And so old Leon would come in and look up at, he'd find a Porky Pig. And then he'd go on, okay. So then that okayed the story, and he'd leave.
Okay, Porky. Don't forget me when you're a star. He'll be back.
As funny as the animation directors were, Leon certainly had no problem with that and kind of led the pack on the studio being a funny place to be. The fact that Leon participated in the Porky Pig cartoon, You Ought to Be in Pictures, playing himself.
How's that? Pretty good, huh?
All right,
How's
all
about
right.
it, Leon? How's about it?
You have to have a great sense of humor to be able to, really make fun of yourself in these films.
I didn't really want to get out of my contract, Leon. I was only fooling. Yeah, April Fool.
Okay, Porky. I knew you'd come back. About that contract, I didn't tear it up. Now get back to the studio and go to work.
Gee, that's swell. Yeah, thanks.
The characters would refer to Leon in many, many of the films, and Leon would be caricatured in many of the cartoons.
He went along with a lot of kidding, and he liked it. He liked being caricatured in a cartoon or referred to. It didn't bother him, again, because he was an avuncular character. He had a wonderful sense of humor, and he laughed easily. I mean, what a great guy to have as your boss, even though he was very cheap and did eccentric things like making people draw high card to get a $50 raise.
And Leon Schlesinger was in the Grease Cooler because he's one of the states. Now, Ray Katz was right up there with the Eskimos. He's number 4 as the rated.
To me, Mr. Schlesinger, he was a pretty nice guy. I knew he was tight. He didn't like to spend money, but he did throw great parties. We'd have the annual Christmas party was wonderful.
Girls and boys, once again, I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Say, I'm going to the bowl.
Leon Schlesinger sold his studio to Warner Brothers, lock, stock, and barrel, in 1944.
Well, they weren't the big hit when he decided to sell. Bugs Bunny was the big hit. He owned the copyright, but they owned the film. Warner's owned the film. And so Warner's bought him out, which he thought, was a great deal.
Hey, you guys, of all the... Wait, why, it's sabotaging.
And when he did that, he didn't completely leave. He kind of just moved over. One of the conditions of his sale was he'd be employed by Warner Brothers for the next few years as the head of they didn't call it this, but the head of their merchandising department. His job was totally to merchandise the Looney Tunes characters. And it seems like a strange thing, going from head of the studio to being an executive for Warner Brothers. But it was a big job, it was a cushy job. Strangely enough, he did a great job of it. He sold the characters to comic books. They made all sorts of costumes, statues, planters, all sorts of merchandising items that came out in the late 40s. Those were all because of Leon, concentrating on doing that. It was quite a lucrative business, which ultimately it became the business. Merchandising of the Looney Tunes characters is one of the mainstays of the Warner Brothers company today. Leon is best remembered today, obviously for being the producer of the Looney Tunes and Merrie Melodies, but really for allowing the artists, the cartoonists, to do their thing, staying out of their way, allowing them to make funny films. If he didn't like it, he'd cut it later, he'd tell them afterward. But he allowed them, he gave them the freedom to fail and to succeed. And they really succeeded.
The fact that he let it happen and created the atmosphere where all of these people, men and women, could horse around and be as free as possible to develop that style is to his credit. It's to his everlasting credit. Because most producers would tell their crew what to do. And that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. Walt Disney was a visionary. And because he was such a great visionary, everybody wanted to do what he had in his head. Leon was not a visionary. Anything but. But he allowed the people who worked for him to be the visionaries.
That's all, folks.